Russia's missiles struck Ukraine's vital port region near Odesa just hours ago, leaving 7 people dead and the world asking one terrifying question: is Putin ready to escalate even further? While Zelensky scrambles to keep grain exports flowing and war rages across multiple fronts, something massive is happening behind closed doors in Miami that could change everything about this military conflict. Before we dive deep into what's really going on, I need you to think about this. What would you do if your country's main trade route was under constant attack and the world's most powerful nations were negotiating your future without you at the table? And here's another question that's been keeping intelligence officials up at night. What if everything Donald Trump's peace team believes about Putin's intentions is completely wrong? Stick with me, because what I'm about to share isn't just another war update. It's a look at how the next few weeks could reshape Europe, America's role in global security, and the lives of 40 million Ukrainians caught in the middle of history's most dangerous chess game. Let me take you back to late Friday night in southern Ukraine. The air raid sirens had become almost routine for residents near the Black Sea, but what happened next was anything but ordinary. Russian forces launched a devastating missile strike targeting critical infrastructure surrounding the port of Pivdeny, located in the strategically vital Odesa region. When the dust settled and emergency responders arrived at the scene, they found absolute devastation. 7 innocent lives had been taken in an instant. 15 more people were rushed to local hospitals with injuries ranging from shrapnel wounds to severe trauma. Ukrainian officials confirmed the casualty count within hours, and the grim reality set in once again for a nation that has endured nearly 3 years of relentless attacks. Now, you might be wondering why this particular port matters so much. Let me break it down for you. The Odesa region isn't just another spot on the map, it's the economic lifeline of Ukraine. This is where Ukrainian grain, sunflower oil, and countless other exports flow out to feed the world. We're talking about a trade corridor that impacts food prices from Cairo to Chicago. When Russia hits these ports, they're not just attacking military infrastructure, they're squeezing the Ukrainian economy and, by extension, affecting global food security. Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Kuleba didn't waste any time responding to the crisis. Within hours, he announced that Ukrainian authorities were in direct communication with their counterparts in Moldova to establish alternative routes for trucks and passengers trying to cross the border. The affected area had become too dangerous for normal transit, and thousands of travelers found themselves stranded. Moldova, Ukraine's neighbor to the southwest, stepped up in a remarkable display of regional solidarity. Moldovan authorities quickly set up temporary camps at multiple border crossings, providing shelter, food, and basic necessities for travelers making their way into Ukraine. It's these small acts of humanity amid the chaos of war that often go unnoticed by the mainstream media, but they tell you everything about the spirit of the people caught in this conflict. But here's where things get really interesting, and I mean genuinely unprecedented. Just hours before the Odesa attack, Ukraine pulled off something that military analysts are calling a game changer. Ukrainian forces successfully attacked a Russian Shadow Fleet tanker using aerial drones. And get this, the strike happened off the coast of Libya in the Mediterranean Sea. Let that sink in for a moment. This is the first time since Moscow launched its full-scale invasion in February 2022 that Ukraine has conducted a military strike in the Mediterranean. We're not talking about the Black Sea, where both nations have been exchanging blows for years. We're talking about the Mediterranean, thousands of miles from the front lines, in waters that brush up against NATO territory. What exactly is this shadow fleet that everyone's talking about? Well, Russia has assembled a collection of aging tankers and cargo ships specifically designed to evade Western sanctions. These vessels operate under obscure flags of convenience, with murky ownership structures that make them nearly impossible to track through normal channels. They transport Russian oil to buyers willing to skirt international restrictions, generating billions of dollars in revenue that flows directly into Moscow's war machine. By striking one of these tankers in the Mediterranean, Ukraine is sending a crystal clear message: nowhere is safe for Russia's sanctions-busting operations. This represents a significant expansion of Ukraine's operational reach and demonstrates capabilities that Western intelligence agencies are surely taking note of. Now let's talk money, because wars aren't just won on battlefields, they're one in bank accounts. President Volodymyr Zelensky announced on Friday that the European Union had secured a massive 90 billion loan to Ukraine. That's roughly $98 billion in American dollars. And it's designed to meet Ukraine's urgent financial needs as the war drags on. Zelensky didn't mince words about what this means for his country. He called it significant support that truly strengthens our resilience. But here's the really clever part about this financial arrangement. Ukraine won't have to pay back a single euro unless and until Russia pays war reparations. Think about that for a second. The EU has essentially said, we've got your back financially, and the only way we expect repayment is if the country that started this war pays for the damage it caused. It's a bold move that ties Ukraine's financial obligations directly to Russian accountability. The loan is structured to last for 2 years, providing Kyiv with a stable financial foundation to continue its defense efforts, maintain government services, and rebuild critical infrastructure even as Russian missiles continue to fall. Zelensky emphasized the importance of keeping Russian assets frozen, saying, "It is important that Russian assets remain immobilized and that Ukraine has received a financial security guarantee for the coming years." All right. Here's where I need you to pay very close attention, because what I'm about to share contradicts almost everything you've been hearing from certain political circles in Washington. According to 6 separate sources familiar with United States intelligence assessments, Vladimir Putin's ambitions extend far beyond Ukraine's eastern territories. The intelligence suggests that the Russian president intends to capture all of Ukraine, not just the Donbass region, not just a land bridge to Crimea, but the entire country. And it doesn't stop there. These intelligence reports indicate that Putin also has designs on reclaiming parts of Europe that belong to the former Soviet Empire. We're potentially talking about the Baltic states, parts of Poland, Moldova, and other territories that Moscow once controlled during the Cold War era. This assessment presents a starkly different picture from the one painted by Donald Trump and his Ukraine peace negotiating team. Trump's envoys have publicly stated that Putin wants to end the conflict, that he's ready to negotiate, that there's a deal to be made. But the intelligence community is seeing something very different in their classified briefings. The most recent of these intelligence reports dates from late September, according to one of the sources who spoke about the assessments. That's just a few months ago, which means this isn't outdated Cold War paranoia, it's current actionable intelligence based on recent Russian communications and military planning documents. This intelligence also directly contradicts Putin's own public statements. The Russian leader has repeatedly denied that he poses any threat to Europe, dismissing such concerns as Western hysteria designed to justify NATO expansion. But if these intelligence reports are accurate, Putin's public reassurances are nothing more than strategic deception. In his most recent public comments, Putin claimed that the ball is now fully and completely in the court of Kyiv and its Western allies regarding an end to the war. He's framing Russia as the reasonable party waiting for Ukraine to come to the negotiating table. But if his actual goal is total conquest, then what kind of peace could possibly satisfy those ambitions? Speaking of negotiations, let's head to Miami, Florida, where some of the most consequential diplomatic discussions of the year are currently unfolding. Secretary of State Marco Rubio made a significant promise on Friday that should provide some reassurance to Ukraine and its supporters. He stated clearly, we can't force Ukraine to make a deal. We can't force Russia to make a deal. They have to want to make a deal. This is important because there have been serious concerns that the Trump administration might pressure Ukraine into accepting unfavorable terms, essentially forcing Kyiv to surrender territory in exchange for an end to hostilities. Rubio's statement suggests that Washington isn't planning to twist Ukraine's arm at the negotiating table. However, the devil is always in the details. Trump's envoys have been working on a plan in which the United States would offer security guarantees to Ukraine, but in exchange, Kyiv would likely be expected to give up some territory. That's a bitter pill for any nation to swallow, especially one that has sacrificed so much to defend its sovereignty. The weekend talks in Miami are being led by Steve Witkoff, Trump's special envoy, and Jared Kushner, the former president's son-in-law who served as a senior White House advisor during the first Trump administration. These aren't career diplomats with decades of experience in Eastern European affairs. They're political appointees with close personal ties to Trump. Joining them is Rustem Umerov, Ukraine's top negotiator who has been at the center of every major diplomatic effort to end the conflict. Umerov released a statement saying he would be acting clearly in line with the priorities defined by the Ukrainian president, adding that security must be guaranteed reliably and in the long term. That last part is crucial. Ukraine has learned the hard way that security guarantees aren't worth much unless they come with real enforcement mechanisms. Remember, Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons in 1,994 inches, exchange for security assurances from Russia, the United States, and the United Kingdom. Those assurances were supposed to protect Ukraine's territorial integrity. We all saw how that worked out in 2014 when Russia seized Crimea, and again in 2022 when the full-scale invasion began. Officials from Britain, France, and Germany are also participating in the Miami talks. This European presence is essential because any lasting peace deal will require buy-in from the EU and NATO members, who have been providing Ukraine with weapons, training, and financial support throughout the conflict. Rubio indicated that he might personally join the negotiations on Saturday, which would significantly elevate the profile of the discussions. When the Secretary of State shows up, it signals that the administration is taking these talks very seriously. Here's where things get even more complicated. Putin's special envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, is also heading to Miami to meet with Witkoff and Kushner. This represents a significant diplomatic development, having high-level Russian and Ukrainian negotiators in the same city at the same time. However, a Russian source told Reuters that any direct meeting between Dmitriev and the Ukrainian negotiators has been ruled out. So we're looking at a situation where the Americans are playing intermediary, shuttling between the Russian and Ukrainian delegations like a divorce mediator trying to get two angry spouses to agree on custody arrangements. Dmitriev is an interesting choice for this role. He's the head of the Russian Direct Investment Fund and has long-standing connections with Western business and political circles. He represents the more pragmatic, economically focused wing of Putin's inner circle, the people who understand that Russia can't sustain this war indefinitely without suffering serious economic consequences. The peace plan being discussed has already gone through several drafts, and earlier versions drew harsh criticism from both the EU and Ukraine for being slanted toward Russia. Witkoff and Kushner have been working with European and Ukrainian negotiators to amend the proposal, trying to find language that all parties can accept. But here's the fundamental problem. If Putin's true goal is total conquest, as the intelligence suggests, then no amount of clever diplomatic language will bridge the gap between what Russia wants and what Ukraine can accept. You can't negotiate a compromise between we want our country to exist and we want your country to not exist. During his annual news conference, Vladimir Putin vowed to press ahead with Russia's military offensive in Ukraine. There was no hint of compromise. No olive branch extended to Kyiv, no indication that Moscow is preparing to scale back its war aims. This public messaging seems inconsistent with the idea that Russia is genuinely interested in peace. If Putin wanted to create space for diplomatic progress, he could easily signal a willingness to compromise, perhaps by ordering a temporary ceasefire or withdrawing from some occupied territories as a gesture of good faith. Instead, Russian forces continue to advance in eastern Ukraine, particularly in the Donetsk region, where they've been making slow but steady progress despite horrific casualties. The Russian military machine keeps grinding forward, fed by an endless stream of conscripts, convicts recruited from prisons, and foreign mercenaries. So where does all this leave us? We've got Russian missiles still falling on Ukrainian cities, killing civilians and destroying critical infrastructure. We've got Ukraine expanding its military operations to unprecedented distances, striking Russian assets in the Mediterranean. We've got billions of dollars flowing from Europe to keep Ukraine's economy afloat. And we've got high-level negotiations happening in Miami that could potentially reshape the entire conflict. The coming weeks and months will be critical. If the Miami talks produce any kind of framework agreement, it could set the stage for more formal negotiations between Putin and Zelensky. But if the talks collapse, or if the intelligence about Putin's true intentions is accurate, then we could be looking at years more of bloody conflict with no end in sight. One thing is absolutely certain. The decisions made in the next few months will determine the fate of Ukraine, the future of European security, and America's role in the world for decades to come. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the margin for error couldn't be smaller. Stay informed. stay engaged. And never forget that behind every headline, there are real people, Ukrainian families, Russian conscripts, European leaders, American diplomats, all trying to navigate a crisis that none of them fully control.